Hello, my name is A. Joseph Dupre III, and I'm a member of the Network Application and Security Group at Keysight Technologies. In this video, I'm going to walk us through the process of deploying BreakingPoint Virtual Edition on Google Cloud Platform, also known as BPS on GCP. So BreakingPoint Virtual Edition can be deployed on many different environments, both public and private clouds, and today I'm going to show you how to deploy the 9.0 Update 3 build of BreakingPoint. This is a beta build. 9.0 Update 3 is a general release for other platforms such as Azure, but we have made available a beta using that Update 3, 9.0 Update 3, as a basis to be able to deploy in Google Cloud Platform, GCP. So what I'm going to do today is walk you through the environment very quickly. We're going to build an environment from scratch, and we're going to use some images to deploy and get a basic BreakingPoint test up and running. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show you that there's currently no deployments assigned to my particular setup here. There are other deployments on here, and I filtered those out. So we'll be using Deployment Manager through the APIs, through the gcloud command line, and we'll be able to kind of look at our deployments here as well. So we start from scratch there. Same thing in the compute engine. There's nothing there associated with my particular owner at this point, my user basically. We're going to use Jinja templates. So there are different ways to deploy in GCP, but we're going to use some templates. Makes it very simple. So one of my goals is to show you how easy it is to get up and running with BreakingPoint on GCP, BPS on GCP. If you're familiar with running BreakingPoint Virtual Edition in other environments, such as AWS, such as Azure, then it's pretty straightforward to be able to do that on GCP. So if you're new to GCP, this will be a little bit of a summary of what I have learned so far. As well as if you're new to BreakingPoint, this is a great way to get up and running with BreakingPoint. Being able to deploy it in the public cloud will allow you to run application and security tests very easily using an industry standard tool. Okay, so there's no instances right now. There are no instances, and there are networks here that I want to make you aware of, but those are not being used by us. So there are a number of default networks that you get when you create a project in GCP, and there are some other ones being used by other users. So this is a public cloud shared environment, but we're going to create our own networks. So everything will be built from scratch using our user. So there'll be GCP-Ixia, you'll see at some point, and everything else is kind of empty there. So again, there are the typical default things that you get when you first start. So you may see other people's firewall rules and stuff, but we're not using those. So some of those are GCP dash, but we're going to be GCP-Ixia. So we'll build those as well, and I'll point those out. We'll filter on those when they come up. But right now, apt-get install -y DOS to Unix, and that's because when you upload it to the Cloud Shell like I did, you may be getting it in a form that has extra control M's and characters and stuff like that. That when you go to execute it in Linux, it doesn't like it very much. So there's a utility in Linux called DOS to Unix. Now I probably have it depending on when the last time I ran. It may determine that I either have the packages already, which it does look like I do. But here's that warning here saying that if you're installing software in this Cloud Shell, be aware that that's not going to be around the next time. You'll have to do this again to install DOS to Unix. And again, that's more so that you can, if I do a history here, pipe grep create, pipe grep making instances here, for example. There may be some other ones labeled that way, but two of them here are going to be attached to ours, and we can go find that out from the other screen, which IP address matches ours. Same thing with firewall rules. Let me see if I can filter time to initialize. That's typically on the first boot is longer than all the others. There's a lot of things that need to be done. I think there's some database initialization, some other things that are done by BreakingPoint. So if you're deploying it like I am from a template and it's the very first time, be aware of that. Now what I'm going to do in the interest of time, and also because this is a beta, you will sometimes find that the first time you try to launch from a template, the BreakingPoint never quite completes its initialization for some reason. That's very likely because it was built on top of an image from another deployment, in another cloud. So there's very likely other initialization and things that are going to be done in 9.10. So if you don't find that things are coming back within a reasonable amount of time, like you go and grab another coffee and come back, in this case, it actually did come back. Let's just double check it responds there. I have seen cases where you might need to reboot it before it gets responsive. So here's an example. So it's giving me an unexpected error that either that or that it never responds is usually an indication on the first boot that you need to reboot it. Again, this is for the beta, and this is something that we have observed, and it's very easily resolved. It just happens on the first initialization, so there's probably some additional initialization that needs to be done by the engineers to make it a more complete Google-centric build for 9.10. But just to make you aware, if you see anything like that or you have trouble connecting with the template, just go ahead and it's just the V controller. So I'm just going to reset it. And that's why I have the console open. Again, this is pre-release software being made available to a select group of individuals, if they get that access. But the deployment is very similar, basically identical to what's going to happen in 9.10. So using those two, those two files, the Jinja and the Jinja.schema, and we'll come back to the network file a little bit later. That's all there was to it. And in fact, you can even see in the CLI, if you wait long enough, it'll show you that the deployment was successful, and it will also indicate the last status of all those same objects that we saw in the web console. So it's back to refusing my connection again. And this is a typical, this is just BreakingPoint V at this point. So you can, for instance, log in with the default admin password. And do question mark here, network info. So it has some addressing stuff. So again, do be patient. Like I said, if you do run into trouble on that first initialization, reset it, or alternatively shut it down and start it back up again. But you don't have to redeploy. And if you're familiar with other environments like Azure, it's not uncommon that if you're taking an image that came from another source and putting it into a public cloud, there can be things with automated deployment. There can be warning messages or errors that look bad on the surface but don't prevent the execution of the instance itself. So that's back responding. What we're looking for, of course, is the main BreakingPoint page. Let's see if we get that now. So we're going to log in. That's looking better. Admin default password. Okay, good. That's good. It's telling me about privacy warning there. And I'm going to go ahead and do some best practice here. You're going to want to change the password. That's the name and the password, the admin password. So I'll do that quickly. Okay. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go and launch the administration, because the template built the two instances and attached it to the network. So like if we go here to the vBlade, like let's take a look at that for a second. So you can see what this looks like here. So if we go down, we can see that it has 3 network interfaces there, 3 NICs, and 10.0.10.11, let's copy that. That's going to be useful. That's its management interface. And then again, so that's the 10.0.10.11, and then 10.0.2.15 and 10.0.3.15 are going to be the primary IP addresses on those networks. So the 10.0.2 and the 10.0.3 are test network 1 and test network 2. So this is a very basic 2-port BreakingPoint scenario where we want to send traffic. And so what we do have to do is we have to go in and associate through the administration here the controller, which is what I'm logged into right now, with the vBlade. So I'm going to go over to VM deployment. I'm going to choose manual virtual chassis, which is what applies here. And then I'm going to assign virtual blades to empty slots, so everything's empty currently. And I'm going to go ahead and paste that IP in. I'm going to verify. Got a check mark, that's a good sign, and hit apply. So I have connectivity, and I just need to assign the vBlade to the vChassis. And again, this is a one-time thing that you have to do. And you know, any other time, if you stop something in the public cloud to save money because you don't want to run it for a period of time, and then you run it again, it will come up the next time. It will boot all the way through. It will show the vBlade already attached, and that association is kind of a one-time thing. And then and that's common. This is a common thing to do with BreakingPoint Virtual Edition anyway, because once we're at this point, this is pretty much, again, the cloud. The deployment manager template, the DM template, did all the heavy lifting. We're just attaching things in BreakingPoint now and just using BreakingPoint Virtual Edition. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new session in BreakingPoint. You're going to see that most of this is similar to other videos we've done on this, which we will point you to some of those at the end of this. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of the tooltips for now. I'm going to go over to the chassis view here. And one thing we're going to do, because it's going to take some time, is we want to take these ports here, and we're going to change the slot here. So there's a little gear icon there. You want to change the slot to use performance acceleration. In order to get the kind of the maximum performance out of instance types, you need to have DPDK turned on. So the Intel DPDK, the data plane development kit acceleration. So you want to turn performance acceleration on in BreakingPoint. That will reboot the virtual card automatically, and it will come back up again and reattach. And that puts it into kind of a mode, into a personality that uses that enhanced data plane. So DPDK and some other performance acceleration functions. So we want to go ahead and do that if we're interested in a performance test. While we're waiting for that, one thing we need to do is we need to go to and grab a test. I'm going to import it. Actually, I'll do that last. want to go to Control Center and then do Administration. I want to set some licensing here. I'm going to use my little cheat sheet here. And the appropriate caveats are that prior to this video being posted, everything you see here will be destroyed. So the test environment, the license environment, all of that will be gone, so that will not be available. So it's just a disclaimer I need to give when I record this video, that everything, all the resources here, all the IP addresses and such will be deleted prior to this video being made available. So we'll need to wait for that, but we had to wait for the vBlade to come back up with the ports. And while we're waiting for that, we'll get connectivity to the license server and get verified there. And you have the option to, license your instance directly on the local license server that's built in, or you can do it with an external license server as well. Okay, that came back. We should also see our ports. You can identify them as being a little bit different because they look more like transceivers, like higher speed Ethernet type of interfaces than just a regular like RJ45 type connector. So go ahead and take ownership there. Of those ports. And then again, you can build a test from this point. This presentation, you can check some of our other videos. This is not going to go into BreakingPoint itself. So I'm just going to go ahead and import a test, which is a common practice anyway, is to build something ahead of time. And I'm going to go to BPTs, which are, and this is C2 standard 8. I should point that out. So while we're loading that up, again, there are parameters in the Jinja files, but you can kind of go in there and see, here's a C2 standard 8. So that's a compute family. C2 is a family of compute instance types. So you can see the CPUs and the memory there. So that's one example instance type that you could use that will get you some performance if you want to send some throughput, which we want to do. And again, the template builds that all for you, and you can override that value if you need to. And I'm going to hit upload, I guess. I got to hit upload. Okay. Now it's actually telling me my test status is green already because it already knows that I've configured this properly. But just to show you, I'm going to go into the network neighborhood real quick here. We're just doing an AppSim, HTTP application test, and you can see that I'm going to send 10.02.15, and I have a count of 10. And then I have a gateway of .1, same thing, 10.03.15, a count of 10, 10.03.1. Let's check that in GCP. because we're going to need to use the interface's IP addresses. And what you can do is, if you go and look at this alias range here, so Google has a nice way of doing this. You can define alias IP ranges. So if you have a primary and secondary IP addresses that you want to have, so here's the primary, and I just defined a /28 that basically continues this. So there's probably actually more IP addresses than I'm using right now, but I had a configuration that had 10 IP addresses, and they happen to be contiguous. So that's just, again, defined in the template, and you can edit this manually and override it or change it. But basically, you do need to make the breaking point configuration, the network neighborhood IP addressing, match what's actually on the interfaces, right? Because it's a public cloud scenario, so you have to use legitimate hosts to generate the traffic. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just quickly hit save and run. And we'll get going sending some traffic. And we're transmitting, but wait a second, that doesn't look good. We're not getting anything back, and we're starting to get errors. Oh, that's not good. There must be something else we need to do. The template did pretty much everything, and I loaded up a config I know works. What else do I need to do? Oh, I know what I need to do. I need to make that connectivity between the two VPCs. So that's why traffic is not flowing. So let's go back. So remember, in GCP, it's a little bit different, especially if you're coming from AWS and Azure, for example. These subnets are on two different VPC networks. So what Google calls a VPC network, virtual private cloud network. So they're actually two separate VPCs. Again, because as of the time of this recording, if you go to, whether you do it programmatically or data-driven with a template, or you go in just build a manual instance, what you'll see is it won't let you attach two NICs of the same instance to subnets of the same VPC. It'll actually not show up, like if you're doing it manually in the GUI. And this is any instance that we've seen. It has nothing to do with BreakingPoint, but just in GCP, it seems that at least as of the time of this recording, you cannot attach two NICs from the same instance. Therefore, you have to go across VPCs. Therefore, you must have VPC networking. And right now, we don't have any VPC network peering. So again, using our tag GCP Ixia. So you can see there's nothing there. Okay, so we need to go do that, and that's what those other two scripts were for. So remember, if we go back to our console here, our Cloud Shell, excuse me, and we do an ls, again, we use the Jinja schema. That's what the two bash scripts are for. One is for deployment, the other one is for cleanup. After you've deployed this, if you want to reverse it, you have to do it in the right order, because if you try to use the templates and the deployment delete command, excuse me, then you will get into an error if you don't disable the VPC network peering, because it's actually pointing to resources and being used. So you have to do the reverse of what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to do a deployment. So we did the deployment first, and then we're going to do the deployment version of the VPC network peering script. So I'm just going to, it's executable, so it should just complete here if I say deploy, and I'm going to go ahead and run that. And there it goes. It's actually creating that VPC peering for us, and it's giving us kind of an update. Be careful here. I found out that these are hyperlinks, so if you click on certain things, they'll take you out of your Cloud Shell, but you can see that it's basically created it in two different directions. It's a little bit easier to see in the GUI here. If I do a refresh now with our tag, we'll see that there's newly created VPC network peering objects here. So one is going from test 01 to test 02, and going from test 02 to test 01 in the reverse direction. Until you do that, you have to do both directions, otherwise it'll say inactive. But both say active. If we come back to breaking point and we just go ahead and restart, sending the traffic, and then we're off. Okay, there we go. So there's the high throughput that we're expecting. So we are now transmitting and receiving at high throughput, and that's exactly what we want to see for a BreakingPoint AppSim test. You can, of course, combine this with security test cases with the security components to be able to do, your strikes, attacks, and at this point, it's basically BreakingPoint. It's BreakingPoint Virtual Edition, so you can generate application traffic and security traffic as well in the same configuration. But if you're interested in doing the performance, this is working because, again, we used an instance type, which is a C2 standard 8 that supports things like TPDK and performance. We put the vBlade instance into performance acceleration within BreakingPoint to tell it to use that optimum path and use all the enhancements to do that. And we were able to basically send traffic once we established a VPC network peer between those. And so that's all I wanted to show you. I just wanted to show you some active traffic running through the environment that, again, we used the Jinja template to basically deploy, the two files that make up the template there, the template and the schema. And then we also stitched that together end to end through a BreakingPoint test, doing that with the VPC peering. So that's great. Test is passed. I do want to point you at some additional resources that you can use. If you search on your favorite, Google or your favorite search engine, you can come across the Ixia blog, and I recommend you go there. There's a lot of good topics that you can get more information about. You can also pick your favorite authors and see what the latest is going on. For example, if I go to cloud here and hit apply, you'll see that Kathy has recently written a blog about staying engaged with remote learning. At this particular time in history, a lot of people are interested in doing a lot of remote work and remote learning, and it's a great time if you are interested in using BreakingPoint in the public cloud, or you want to learn more about some of the other test cases and things that we make available, in terms of our products. Application and performance and security test tools. You can read all the different areas there, layer 2, 3, layer 4, 7, and BreakingPoint as well. There's a BreakingPoint public cloud tutorials link here that it mentions and talks about, which will take you to the Ixia Training TV channel on YouTube, so you can go there as well directly. And I recommend that you go to the Ixia Training TV and subscribe, ring the bell, get updates whenever new videos get posted. For example, in the public cloud tutorials, you'll see that there's deployment videos for Amazon AWS and Microsoft Azure for 9.0, and very shortly this video will join that list as well for 9.0 Update 3 beta for GCP. So do check that out. You'll see and get updates there. It's very helpful. You'll see similar videos that walk you through the deployment. And structurally, BreakingPoint is very similar on the different public clouds. So if you're familiar with AWS or Azure, hopefully this video will help you make that transition over to Google Cloud Platform, GCP. So that's basically deployment of BreakingPoint on Google Cloud Platform in a nutshell. I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching.